Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours FM, the podcast where you never know what's going to happen or what's going to be said. It is truly up for grabs. This is episode 80, and I am very pleased to have Rachel Baker on the show today. Rachel, how are you doing?
I'm great, Carrie. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you. I'm on my, I don't know, probably my fourth coffee for the day. So it's only 1 o'clock here. So it's pretty good. So
nice.
For folks that are tuning in, I'm so glad that you are able to listen live with us. And I would like to encourage you to send any questions you might have for Rachel via Twitter. You can do that with hashtag OfficeFM. And if you're over on watching this on Google+, you can use the Google Q&A. And I promise to check that diligently for questions over there. We have a new sponsor on the show today. Super excited to introduce you guys to CMS, and they do exactly what their name says, which is migrate sites from one CMS to another CMS. And they make it a lot less painful than you might actually think it is. So I will tell you a little bit more about that later. So for now, let's dive in. Did you bring your snorkel? Or
I did not. I do have flippers though, so I think I can.
Excellent.
You know, at least I can kick my way out, not dive down.
Perfect. Okay, so Rachel, I've only met you once in person, right? In St. Louis. We have not met at a WordCamp San Francisco. I don't think we've gotten to hang out a second time.
I don't think so. We've been at WordCamp San Francisco's together, but I don't think we actually hung out.
Now this is kind of awkward because I was avoiding you and okay.
It's okay.
We'll have to remedy that. Are you going to WordCamp US?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. I'm hoping to go. I have not gone so far as to purchase an airline ticket yet, but I'm very much hoping to do that. So you're the WordCamp queen. Have you kept count of how many you've been to?
No, I'm proud to say this year I haven't been to any yet.
You're proud?
I went to many. Yeah, I went to a lot last year. I think I went to 7 or 8, and this year I was, I purposely kind of stepped back and let other people do the talking for me, and was able to stay at home. It was awesome.
Very nice. A quick little something for you, Rachel. If you would mind, when you're not talking, do a little mute thing, because I think I'm getting some echoing. And I'll give you the keyboard shortcut for that. It is Control or Command D. What? There's a Hangout tooltip right there, people. Yeah, so I actually have slowed down my own WordCamp attendance this year. I kind of went full throttle last year, and then this year I've dialed it back to a more reasonable level, because it is a big time commitment. And then I know when you go, a lot of times you're speaking, of course, which is a huge time commitment. So yeah, well, I look forward to hopefully seeing you at WordCamp US. And yeah, if you're listening live to this, or even if you're listening after the fact, shoot a tweet to and tag it with Office FM and let me know if you are going to be there, because I would love to meet any of my listeners in person. So Rachel, for those who have not had the great pleasure of hanging out and eating chicken wings with you on a hotel roof on a cold, cold St. Louis night, can you give us the Rachel Baker breakdown? Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. Currently, I am the lead engineer at a website called the WireCutter. It's thewirecutter.com as well as thesweethome.com. And in my spare time, I am one of the co-lead developers of the WP REST API project, which is a feature plugin being developed for WordPress. And in my spare time, I'm also the comments component maintainer with WordPress.
The comments component maintainer, meaning that the comments kind of falls under your domain in terms of future development or fixes, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, mostly just bug gardening the component and reviewing patches and recommending things to be committed. Yep.
Bug gardening. I haven't heard that before, and I love it. What are you doing? I'm planting some bugs. I'm gonna find them out later. Okay, so you taught a class over on WP Sessions about the REST API. Bring us up to speed. Give us the I have never even heard of REST, what it is, all the way to kind of what that means for WordPress.
So all the way back to REST. So assuming like people don't know what a REST API is, all the way to where we are now. Oh, jeez. Okay, so REST is a convention for building application programming interfaces, APIs. That stands for representational state transfer, I believe. And what it is essentially is that communications can go over HTTP. So example, I can put in my, open up a web browser, type in office hours.fm, and that actually sends a GET request to like your server. That's essentially in a certain form a REST request. But what this really means is that it provides a kind of a common structure and architecture for how you can communicate and the location at which you request resources from an API. And it's the most common one in use currently. And WordPress already currently has an API. It's called the XMLRPC API. I should say WordPress has another external API they have internal APIs and how you communicate, how different components communicate with each other. But they have another external API, the XMLRPC API, which then is just a different standard, and you have to know a lot more about, like, you have to have read the documentation and really know where to go and look to get the information that you're requesting, instead of just being able to say like, oh, well, if I want users, I bet you I can just go to /users and then I'll get all the users, instead of having to know it's like get capital ALL like users, right? Like it's
really obvious.
It's just makes it a lot easier to do that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, not completely obvious, but it does.
Oh, no, I mean the API structure for XML/RPC.
Oh yeah, definitely not obvious. Yeah, and what's cool about REST is that you get like a essentially like a table of contents. Like the API has like an index that'll say like here are the locations where you can find stuff. So it's almost self-documenting and gonna make it so we can bring WordPress's external API into a much more the modern era.
Very cool. So will users, the end user, the average, just I blog with WordPress, really anything different that they would notice, or just makes developers happy?
Sure. So I think what it opens up and it allows to happen with WordPress by developers will eventually trickle down to the users. So an example would be, Carrie, have you ever used like if this then that?
Woo, can get off the mute trigger. Yes, I love that.
Yeah, so I mean, it makes it so it kind of will open up your site to like if this then that. So maybe even if you're not a developer or have no programming knowledge, this would make it so maybe you can say like if site A posts a new piece of like a new review here, then also publish it to site B, right? Or display it here in site B, or send me an email, that kind of stuff. It makes it so kind of takes it like the site's the step beyond RSS. If I had to explain that, so even users that don't have programming knowledge use RSS to be able to read sites and display information from our site like somewhere else. And this just kind of is just puts that all on steroids.
Very cool. And so I'm assuming if it's opening up to if this and that, then it would also open up for like Zapier or any similar kind of service.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for clarification, these are, I'm just, saying like, these are the things that could be, and definitely Zapier, I don't, if this and that, they would have to add that little service widget thing to do it. But yes, all very possible.
Very, very cool. And that question came from Devinder. Thank you, Devinder, for that one. And while and I think we may probably talk about a lot of nerdy things today, which I love because my listeners are nerds, and I say that with great love and affection. But so here's a nerdy question from Ryan. He is asking how XMLRPC and SOAP are the future. I think he's trolling a little bit there.
Yeah, he's totally trolling.
And I should read these questions beforehand to not catch that on there. And then your WireCutter's pivot to, God, it's a complete troll. Forgive me. Why did I? Physically cutting wires is a service. All right, Ryan, you got me. Duly noted. I'm gonna read these in my head before I start reading them out loud. And while we're taking troll questions, Josh wants to know about your affinity for sweater vests.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like sweater vests. I always have. I don't know. I grew up in the 80s and just wearing a button-down shirt and a sweater vest or like V-neck sweater, corduroy pants, and like loafers was just what I wore all the time. And
did you go to did you have to wear a uniform at school?
No, I just wore that.
You just made your own. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Loafers.
Yeah.
Loafers.
And yep.
Sweet.
Corduroy pants didn't stick around, but pretty much the rest did.
I think cords are making their way back, or at least small cords or thin cords, not the really wide cords. I don't know. All I know is people do not tune into this show to hear my fashion advice because it's pretty awful.
I understand.
Okay, so back to REST API and the work that you're doing with. By the way, you use the term plugins as features, and if anybody's listening is not familiar with that, that was something I guess maybe WordCamp San Francisco a couple of years ago that Matt talked about. I could be completely remembering this, but anyway, so developing plugins instead of just rolling things on up into core, first developing plugins and getting them solid and then rolling them into core at some point. I don't know if that was a very fair representation, but can you talk a little bit about, was there any, what's the word I'm looking for? Any challenge to going in this direction and away from what Ryan says is the future of XMLRPC?
Yeah, yes, there's been lots of challenges. I think our biggest, several years ago, WordPress adopted this features as a plugins model, which is that large new features would be developed as plugins first and get the feature out there and people using it, and then be considered for to become a part of WordPress core. And the first kind of feature plugin was MP6, which was the kind of redesign of the WordPress admin, and that went really well. Our challenge is that, first of all, we're the feature plugin that has been a feature plugin for the longest and not like in WordPress core, and has the largest hypothesizing here, but I'm pretty sure that I'm correct, that we have the largest user base for our plugin for like people that are using it in production or have taken a look and played with it already. So our challenge is that it is so tightly coupled with WordPress itself, and that it essentially is just a different way to communicate with WordPress, that it doesn't work as a standalone plugin. It has to be part of core, and that was when the troll questions came from Ryan McHugh. He's the chap who started the plugin as part of Google Summer of Code several years ago, and I started playing with it about 2 years ago and got involved. But we're because it's hard to get buy-in across like all of our plugin, because it's not just here's a way you can here's the infrastructure of our API and here's how you can like create custom endpoints, but also here are the core endpoints for every part of WordPress. We're doing it in 2 parts. We're in 4.4 that is slated to be released December 8th. Currently already has included in WordPress trunk are the infrastructure for our plugin, with the idea being that the core endpoints would come in 4.5. So yeah, getting attention and validation has taken some time, but yeah, I think we're finally getting there.
Well, you actually just answered Jackie's question, because she was asking how it would be rolled out, and there you go, over a couple of releases. I noticed you do have a Diet Coke with you, which you're sort of Diet Coke famous in the internet space. How many of those do you typically enjoy in a given day?
Oh, I don't. Well, let's not talk about that.
I mean, there's no judgment. I just, mere curiosity.
I don't know. It varies. This is 2 for today, which, I mean, it's like 1:18 for me PM, so that's not too bad. Anyway, sometimes it just depends on the day, really. Some really long days, like, I don't know, an embarrassingly large amount.
Do you like buy the pallets from Costco, or are you little onesie twosies at the store? I mean, do you go all out?
I'm not onesie twosie, but yeah, sometimes I go to Costco and get the big like 36 pack, or just go to a grocery store and get like 3 12 packs. Whatever.
What would be awesome is actually having a soda machine in your office. I'm thinking about that Big with Tom Hanks. I love that movie in the 80s or whenever that came out, and he had a soda machine in his apartment. I thought that was pretty cool. Wow, and that has nothing to do with anything, and I'm off my meds today, so we don't know where. Just kidding. I don't know. Well, anyway, but I am getting a little bit of feedback that apparently the video has been hard to access on my website. I don't know why that is the case, and I'm sorry. I'm glad that you have found me over on YouTube. If you're listening to this and also having trouble, just go to YouTube and search for Office Hours FM, or on Google Plus. You can do the same and come across it. Of course, if you're listening to this, you don't need to know how to access it because you're already accessing it. So never mind. Scrap everything I just said. Whew. Okay. I'm sorry, Rachel. Normally, I'm a little bit more put together, and I'll use the term "put together" kind of loosely. But today, I'm a little all over the place. So, okay. So, got a great question from Jackie. She wants to know what are the biggest challenges WordPress has had with the media library and responsive images. Have you had any part in that process?
No, I am not the best person to answer that. I can tell you that there is another feature plugin going into WordPress 4.4. WordPress 4.4, by the way, is going to be amazing. That does bring responsive image integration to WordPress, and I haven't had the chance to play with it too much. I can tell you from being a part of like the weekly core developer chat discussions on Slack, I can tell you that the feedback and biggest concern that I've seen is the like amount of space that images will take up in your media library, and that you kind of add something at like the largest scale, and like what that means the way that the images are saved, which I'm not exactly clear on the details on, but yeah, I mean, sorry, Jackie, not exactly my my realm, and usually those discussions happen right after we have like our API check-in, where then I usually am running to the bathroom, so I apologize. I don't have a better answer there, but
no, that will actually be interesting to see about that image storage and the impact that has on overall site size. Funny enough, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on the air or not, but anyway, I'll be out at lynda.com next week recording a couple of courses, and one of the courses is on mobile responsiveness, and I had planned to include a section on the RICG image plugin, which is now, being rolled into core. I was like, oh, that would really suck if the course came out and it was immediately outdated by the fact that that plugin is just seamlessly part of core. Anyways, there you have it. I won't worry about that today. We're getting all kinds of comments about, I thank you guys for sharing that YouTube link. I am sorry about the troubles for today. Let's talk about, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I did see a question that was like, can I explain in practical terms what a REST API can bring? And I guess, there's a lot of things I guess in the tangent to the question you asked, Carrie, about how what this means for the general user. What I can tell you how this also kind of will change the future of WordPress. One of them is that the taking content from your WordPress site and displaying it, or like adding, editing, or deleting or displaying content from a WordPress site into other places now becomes a lot easier, and something that already has a built-in programming interface that is standard across all WordPress sites. So what that means is that Carrie, do you have the WordPress mobile app on your phone to like create posts?
I do, and it's terrible.
Yeah, so that's terrible, right? And there for a period was an alternative, but was like Postmatic or something. I remember what the name of it exactly was, but then Automatic bought it and shut it down. But this kind of opens the landscape up for someone else to do something like that and make that a lot better, and not have to rely on be something that relies on the WordPress app itself. And also, one of the biggest problems we have in the WordPress community, like development-wise, is that our themes are so tightly coupled with, our themes are riddled with PHP. So if you're like a front-end developer that's just you're awesome at JavaScript and you're amazing at CSS and HTML, you kind of like look at the WordPress themes and are like, ugh, I don't want to mess with that PHP, and you run the other way. And the future, JavaScript has been something that's like been very increasing in popularity again. It's back like sweater vests, and what this does is it makes it so to communicate with your own WordPress database, like you can just use JavaScript and not have to use and not have to use admin Ajax, which if you're if you're familiar with WordPress development, that's the way you can send Ajax requests from like a front end to the back end. But admin Ajax actually loads all of WordPress. Like when you load it, it's a big performance issue in WordPress, and it's just not sustainable to like power a whole theme off of that. But this gives like you can build a theme for the .wordpress.org theme repository and submit it and have it be built off of just the REST API. So this is gonna kind of help change the future of like the front end of themes of WordPress. Also help with plugin integrations and WordPress sites talking to each other, or WordPress and Drupal sites, or Carrie said you're sponsored with CMS to CMS. Like this is going to make their jobs a lot easier. It's kind of just gonna open up all the data you have in your WordPress site and make it much easier to open that up and share that and sync information back and forth across other things.
What I'm hearing is that WordPress went to counseling for a long time, and it's feeling more open and in a mood to share and communicate with those around it.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to put it.
WordPress personified. Thank you for sharing it that way, because that actually that's interesting to hear about how it will impact theme development. I was just checking out the theme resource handbook recently, because that's the sort of thing I do with my spare time. I'm curious if it's been updated with that stuff yet, because I don't remember seeing anything about it.
I don't think so. It was kind of a new ruling. I think it's on their blog. I don't know if it's made it into the theme handbook. It's not official like your themes must do this, right? But it is allowed. Just
that it's an option. Yeah, that is very cool. Jackie, shoot. Rachel, I just need to apologize. I had one question I was going to ask from Jackie that was a throwback to our earlier conversation, but then she just popped in with one that was right on cue with where we're at. So I'll go out of order there. But she asked, how much longer will we have to write code for no JavaScript fallbacks? I'm kind of wondering if you'll...
wouldn't you always want to do that?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever be free from that, because if, depending on device and it's always going to be there. I think your site will just be experienced differently by devices that are running JavaScript, but I think they'll always be there. Anything to add, since I just totally cut you off and answered the question?
No, your answer was fine. Yeah, if you have to do that, I would encourage everyone to do it, but how important and how you prioritize that, I'm sure, depends on your audience, and do they all browse the web with JavaScript? And there's a lot of accessibility reasons why you would want to do that, why you would want to make sure you always have your Node.js fallbacks, as well as this is a global world, and just because everyone you see in front of has an iPhone, has a smartphone, and the fastest computer, and doesn't use uses all modern browsers, doesn't mean that's the case for everyone across the world. So
I think flip phones may be making a comeback.
Yeah.
With the sweater vest, I don't know, but yeah. So Jackie commented, but all the cool stuff is in JS, and you're right. You can do so many really cool things, but until the globe upgrades itself, there we go. And I'm glad that you pointed out accessibility stuff. So in theory, you should be able to disable all JavaScript, all style sheets, everything, and still be able to completely read the content of a site in its proper hierarchy. Yeah. So what? Okay, I got a question for you, and it's not related to anything we've talked about before, but I'm curious. First of all, are you you're working in your home office? You work at home.
I do.
And then secondly, can you describe your setup? I mean, you could just, if I don't know,
Like
if you
my
could pair,
computer setup?
you could pair. I don't mean like the specs on your machine, but what's your? Maybe you just take a picture of your desk later, and you can post it on Twitter. Okay, how about this? How many monitors are sitting on your desk?
Well, I have a Dell 24-inch. That's the WireCutter pick for the best 24-inch monitor. I have an Apple Thunderbolt display that's actually on the floor right now because it just burned out on me the other day and stopped working. And then a 15-inch MacBook Pro, which I don't know if you count as a monitor. So on my desk, I technically have one monitor, and then I have one monitor on the floor that should be on my desk, but just doesn't work.
I'm very sorry about your Thunderbolt display. That's kind of sad. Why do you have both the Dell and the Mac? Or is that for testing purposes, or do you actually do development, go back and forth?
I usually close the lid to my laptop and just use those two monitors, and then just like split have something running in one and like Slack or something on the other. Like, use one as my main, and then the other one is like the miscellaneous stuff on the side.
Oh, well, all right. Yeah, I'm one Thunderbolt display, two computers. So, but I only ever have one computer plugged into the Thunderbolt display. So I take that cable and kind of go back and forth between which computer I need to be working on. So in my introduction or description of you over on officehours.fm, I refer to you as a full stack developer. And Devinder is asking, what exactly does it mean to be a full stack developer? And I kind of made that assumption based on the fact that you are really great at front end stuff and also knowledgeable on all the database and the back end side of things. But tell us, how did you get that fancy title?
Sure. So I'm actually a pretty terrible front end developer now. I used to be freelance, where then I had to do everything from all the backend coding to the front end stuff as well. And then I started working at agencies. And funnily enough, I was working at an agency called The Nerdery. My first project for them, I'm like this totally cocky person, like coming into working for them. And my first project, we had a lot of backend developers, but there wasn't anyone available to do the front end for this website. We had to turn around in like 3 weeks, and I was like, no problem, like I can bang out this front end, no big deal. And I think like my first week into the project, one of the senior front end engineers of The Nerdery was reviewing my markup, and subsequently they kicked me off the project because it was like deemed unsavable based on their standards of select performance and like all sorts of things that I was like, oh yeah, I can see what you mean, but like I'm just trying to, I had the whole like I had the whole like, I was the master at working for myself, and come into this situation where like everyone's expected to be like a much more narrow expert, and found out that wasn't where I was. That was not my expertise, and ever since then I kind of just slowly skulked back to the back end, and I like the back end of doing back end development much more. It's like something. It's much more binary, right? Like it's like something works or it doesn't, and there is a lot of like, well, that's not the right way you do it, and those kind of things. But it's not nearly as open as like front end is. It's less drama, sounds like, in a weird kind of way. Yeah, it's I guess it's that people can look at your code and in backend and still judge it, but it's not you don't, it's not quite as right. Like people can't inspect it in Chrome to then do the comic book guy voice, like, actually you should do it this way, kind of criticisms. Like I don't have to hear any of that. Like no one can see my PHP. Like they can send all those to the front end developer.
Nice, very nice.
But I do enjoy that. All said, like I guess I think on my website, which I haven't updated in a long time, I still do call myself a full stack developer because, like, I don't know, I still enjoy it. I like doing it when I can, but it's just not my expertise anymore. It's not where I bring the most value. Like no one would hire me to do front end development, like as a consultant anymore. But they would, you know. I get offers all the time for the back end.
All right. Well, when you change your website, I'll change mine, just to say backend developer. Deal. So Jackie has a question about front end development, and maybe the question would better apply to backend development. But how do you see those roles evolving? I guess in terms of use of technology, or you can interpret that however you wish.
Sure. So at WireCutter, so I'm the lead engineer, and we have I've been building up a new team, and I have a front end engineer, and I will have just I have a senior front end engineer, and then I like get super nerdy and dig into that. And then the other individual, it's their job to kind of care and focus on everything else. I think JavaScript kind of blends those two worlds a lot, and I think more and more that front-end developers are being asked to do a lot more. I see like job listings where it's like, front-end developer must know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, ASP, .NET, Visual Basic, and
just slip those in.
Yeah, SQL performance. It's like, well, all these crazy things are just like, okay, right. Good luck finding that person. So I think all around as engineers and developers, like there's a lot for us that we can focus on and dig our hands into to get dirty, from like DevOps, server side stuff, all the way to caching and hosting setups to PHP performance and MySQL tuning, all the way to all these front end build tools that people are using, like Bower and Grunter or Gulp. I think what the coolest thing is that more and more these are starting, the two things are starting to meld a little bit, but you still kind of, Carrie, I know you just recently took a job, and you can say like, hey, theming is like my thing, like that's what I'm good at, right? And I think that's important, and it doesn't really matter if it's like back end or front end, but I think being able to say like, this is the thing that I'm good at and I enjoy doing, and that I am an expert at, and can figure out solutions too quickly and know what to do in certain situations. I think being able to position yourself in that kind of way and have that kind of knowledge, like that is extremely valuable. I don't know if I'm really answering the question.
No, that makes sense. So what came to my mind is, think of developers are always saying, well, designers should know basic HTML and CSS, and designers are like, well, developers should know like how to make things actually pixel perfect and not hideous. So is there any, as someone who's more comfortable on the back end side of things, is there any like little irritations or a bit of wisdom that you would pass on to a front-end developer? Like, does that question make sense? You're muted. You're still muted.
There you go. That question does make sense. And I guess so my answer is, if you're a front-end developer engineer, my recommendation is to know as much JavaScript as possible nowadays. But I guess honestly, I mean, to your point, Carrie, about people are saying to designers oh, you should know how to write HTML and CSS. Honestly, the best designs I've ever seen a designer pump out are from designers who don't know a lick of HTML and CSS. So I don't know about you, but I would much rather be the designer that pumps out the best design than be the designer that pumps out the fourth best design, but can hack my way through some crappy HTML, CSS stuff that anyone who is a front-end developer would look at, turn up their nose at, and just rewrite themselves. You know what I mean?
True. Well, and what that kind of it brings up an interesting point. Like, I'm not a designer, but I do occasionally try. And I wonder if, assuming someone actually had those skills, unlike me, but if not knowing about, not thinking about how you would actually code out those things, if it frees up their creativity, because they're not worried about thinking about, okay, well, how am I going to float this? And maybe I shouldn't put that there. I don't know. Interesting food for thought. Okay, I'm going to take a little brief respite from questions. You can take a sip of water, but don't run off to the restroom because it won't be that long. I wanted to share with our listeners more about CMS to CMS. They are, and I am reading this, so stand by. They're an innovative online migration service specializing on website migration across CMS and form solutions. And basically, they take everything. It can be text, it can be media, all of that. And their service is the bridge that connects those two things. Yes, so if you ever have a client, like I had a client once that was wanting to convert from HubSpot over to WordPress, or if you have people wanting to do Blogger to WordPress migrations, and of course you can go the opposite way. But since we're all WordPress lovers, we'd want to be bringing people to our WordPress fold. But you can try a free demo migration over on their site, and you can do that using the short link cdills.me/CMS to CMS. So check them out, an interesting little service. And we actually talked about them on the show a while back. I believe it was maybe it wasn't when Jackie was on. I can't remember. But anyways, so check them out, and we do appreciate them sponsoring today. Once again, if you have questions for Rachel, you can do those by tagging them on Twitter with #OfficeFM. So, okay, we're back. You ready over there?
I'm ready.
Okay. So I love this question, and it's, I believe from the person who's asking it, that might be a little bit of a loaded question, but do you think there's a need for better coding standards in the WordPress community?
Okay, so if you know who's asking it, do you know what they're referring to?
Yes. So in general, say someone calls themselves a front-end developer because they know a little bit of HTML, when in fact, really being a front-end developer is more than just knowing a little bit of basic HTML. So I guess standards in place for those who would assign a title to themselves. Is that a little extra better context?
Yeah, so I guess, so first of all, we all had to start from somewhere, right? Like at some point, I built, the first website someone paid me for that I built was in 1996. And it was probably pretty terrible, but we all have to start somewhere. And I've been doing this a really long time, and overall, instead of better coding standards, I would say I think we need a little more empathy for people who are starting out, and instead of judging what they're doing wrong, maybe help them learn how to do it better. Like, but not just help them learn how to do it better, but explain why something is a better approach, or why, why it's useful to, I don't know, like escape PHP output and like what that means and why you should do that. I think that is a much better, that is what we do need, instead of, hey, you didn't do this, you suck.
Okay, I phrased my question maybe I didn't context it well, because wasn't coming across not meant to be judgmental against, I mean, yes, everybody's got to start somewhere. I wrote crappy code as recently as probably yesterday. But in terms of the availability, I mean, because like if you go look on the WordPress Codex, there's standards for how you write your dot block, or how you the syntax for your CSS. I mean, there's a lot of that document.
We have well documented coding standards.
But who's teaching those standards, I guess? Or there's no, because there is such a low barrier of entry to building plugins or themes, or just, tinkering with code with WordPress, that you end up with a lot of folks that don't even know, for instance, that documentation exists in the codex. So how do we, I guess, level up the playing field for, I don't know, for those.
I don't know. I mean, so when you submit to the standard you're referring to, those are WordPress core. I'm a big believer in, I'm a big believer in, when you're writing code for a project, like, you should follow that project's, coding standards. When I was starting out and called myself a WordPress developer, I certainly didn't follow all those standards. And there's a lot of people, you'd be surprised at like the number of people that still don't. But honestly, the way that I've seen most people start to become familiar and kind of level their awareness of why adhering to some sort of standard or guidelines is important is they start contributing to another project, or they submit like a pull request on GitHub, or they try to submit a theme to the WordPress theme repository, where then, when those are reviewed, I used to be a member of the theme review team, and I don't have I think technically I still am, I just haven't reviewed the theme in a while. But, there's documented standards for that, and almost every single theme, new theme that gets reviewed has things that we send back on it. So I don't know how you do it to just the average person that just, like, I don't know how you teach that stuff to the average person who's like, I'm just cool sitting here in my corner, like, building stuff for myself. Like, how do you go and like poke at that person? You have to kind of wait until they're like, okay, now I'm kind of comfortable enough that I'm willing to show what I've done to other people, and test the waters there. And I think that's like, if you have a project on GitHub, or you see that kind of stuff with like the submissions from WordPress themes, then or even are a member of core, like, your code gets reviewed that way and you get feedback that way. And I think that it's a big thing to get over as a beginning developer, of like, oh gosh, someone wants to look at my, I don't want to, like, it's almost like having someone see you naked, right? It's like, gosh, I don't want someone to see this, to see what I'm doing. But I think encouraging people to make that leap is the best thing we can do, because it means that we will have you'll have someone contributing to projects and leveling up their skills all at the same time.
Now, Rachel Carden gave a great talk. It wasn't a WordCamp. I'm trying LoopConf, I believe it was. It was basically about that first thing, like don't be afraid to show your code, even though it does feel like you're exposing yourself to the world, or might get criticized for, you know, having too many spaces or not enough spaces or whatnot. But it was a really great talk. It's somewhere online. I'll find it and tweet that out later. On the same topic, Patricia has a question, and it's a really great question. She says, do you think that this is an open source issue? And, you know, should there be a forum where maybe we're inviting these newer developers, if you will, to come in and get feedback on their code in sort of a safe place?
Yeah, so I don't think it's an open source issue at all. I think open source is what makes it so the developers that were typically don't have their code seen, then like that's where they can go to get that code review easily. So I don't think it's an open source issue, because this happens with proprietary code as well. But I don't know about a forum. I mean, even when I was like freelance, I would have someone. It was always nice to like have another, you know, friend who was a developer, where I could be like, hey, you know, can you just take a look at this for me before I, you know, launch this site? You know, here's some particular things to look for, that kind of stuff. But being able to have someone give your code a once over, or give you some feedback on some stuff. I mean, it's a big thing to ask of someone. So honestly, I think there may be a forum out there, there would be a lot more people with code posted than people who could go through and give feedback on it. But I think there's actually a subreddit for this. It's like our code reviews or something like that. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't if that should exist, and what form it should. That I'm not sure on.
A subreddit, interesting. Okay, yeah, and Patricia follows up. She says, every developer in the corporate world needs to get over it, meaning showing your code. You can't move forward without being reviewed for best practices within your development teams, and that is true. But it's scary at first, especially if you don't really have any confidence in what you're doing. But it is a great way. I mean, getting feedback, and that was some of the most helpful learning for me. And Gary Jones was a big part of this, of telling me when something wasn't right, telling me how it should be, and then giving me the why, you know, behind that. And that way, you know, it makes sense. It's not just this is all wrong, here's the code to fix it. It's explaining the process of how you get to that right code in the first place. And I think that actually Gary is probably why I refer to the documentation standards and the coding standards over at WordPress.org so very frequently.
Yeah, I mean, we do that. I mean, at the WireCutter, we don't push code to production without someone reviewing it. I mean, even on the REST API team, you know, even if Ryan would write code, he couldn't push it. Like someone else would have to review it. So, I think even if it's just a sanity check, no matter how smart or I screw up is empty and is not empty all the time. You know, or just accidentally type in and I don't know, do a double colon or screw something up all the time, where it's just like, oh, thank God someone's double checking that for me. So yeah, I think code reviews and any development team are invaluable. I think honestly the biggest problem is like people who are working somewhere where like they don't have a development team. Well
said. Okay, 3 cheers for coding standards and for exposing yourself to the feedback of others in the process. So for you folks that are listening in, we're going to wrap up just a couple minutes early today, because Rachel, who was so gracious to give us her time today, has a meeting like in 4 minutes. And if we let her go early, she has time to, you know, pee or get another Diet Coke, which we want to support her in those activities. But Rachel, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us. For everyone who's tuned in, you hopefully got an email reminder today, a couple of hours before the show, reminding you. If you would like to receive that every week and you are not yet, just go to officehours.fm/subscribe. And Rachel, where can people find you and stalk you on the internet?
Sure. So on Twitter, at Rachel Baker, and it's probably the best place. If you're in the WordPress, making WordPress Slack channel, I'm Rachel Baker there. Yeah, I don't really, my website's out of date and doesn't even have my correct job at it. Or you can, check out the WireCutter.com or the SweetHome.com and find yourself buying the best trash can or the best 24-inch monitor.
Hey, can they fix Thunderbolt displays?
No, it sucks. So I got to take it to the Apple Store.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Rachel. Good luck in that next meeting. And for all of you who are tuned in, I always appreciate you tuning in and supporting the show. And I will see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for having me on, Carrie. Bye.
Betcha.